The bartender has been working here for 30 years, and not a single one of his regulars is still alive. My name is Elliot Grayson. I am 41 years old. I have been sober for 2 years, 3 months and 17 days. I work missing persons for the New Orleans Police Department. What I'm about to tell you happened 6 months ago, and I'm still trying to piece it together. It began with a case file that should have been routine. 7 people, all adults, vanished over a 3-month span. No bodies, no ransom notes, no digital footprints after a certain point. The only thread connecting them was a single credit card charge from the same place, a bar called the Gullet. I'd never heard of it. Neither had anyone in the department, but the charges were real. $43, $67, always for alcohol, always under the same merchant code, and always the last transaction before these people dissolved into thin air. The first was Maria Santos, 28, an accountant whose sister reported her missing when she didn't show up for a family dinner. The last anyone heard from Maria was on a Tuesday night. She texted her roommate, excited about trying a new jazz bar downtown. That was it. Then came David Chen, 35, a software engineer. His boyfriend called us, frantic, when David never came home from what he described as checking out some underground music scene. The same pattern, the same cryptic merchant code on his final bank statement. By the 5th missing person, I knew we had a serial case. By the 7th, I feared we were dealing with something else entirely. I've been on this job for 15 years. I've seen the grim aftermath of runaways, kidnappings, and domestic disputes gone sideways. This was different. These people weren't just missing, they were erased, as if a cosmic backspace key had been hit on their existence. The address on the statements led me to Royal Street, deep in the humid heart of the French Quarter. I'd walked these cobblestones for years, but had never noticed the Gullet. The building was there, a sliver of forgotten history wedged between a gaudy voodoo shop and a musty bookstore. It was narrow, ancient, with a simple wooden sign hanging from rusted chains. The entrance was a door painted pitch black, with a brass handle shaped like a coiled serpent, worn smooth by countless hands. No windows, no neon advertisements, just that sign, swaying in the thick evening air, as if it were breathing. Staked the place out for 3 days. People entered. They looked ordinary, some even happy, but I never saw the same person twice. And I never, ever saw anyone leave. On the 4th day, I made my move, dressed in civilian clothes, a micro-recorder tucked in my pocket. I convinced myself I was just gathering intel. I told myself I could handle 1 drink, just one. The door creaked open onto a steep, descending staircase. The smell hit me immediately, a potent cocktail of old wood, stale cigarette smoke, and something else beneath it all, something organic, damp, and vaguely sweet, like rotting flowers. The air was heavy, clinging to my lungs. The stairs were tight, my footsteps echoing on the worn carpet. Halfway down, the music started, jazz, but distorted and strange, as if it were being played at the bottom of a well. At the base of the stairs, I found the Gullet. The bar was impossibly large, far bigger than the building above should have allowed. The ceiling was low, and the dark wood walls seemed to curve inward, giving the unnerving impression of being inside a throat. Dim, flickering light came from fixtures that looked like gas lamps, but hummed with a low electric current. Perhaps a dozen customers were scattered around, each sitting alone, each fixated on their glass with an intensity I recognized from the darkest days of my own drinking. It was the look of complete absorption, of desperate need. Behind the bar stood a man I will never forget. He was tall and unnaturally pale, with an ageless quality that made my skin crawl. He never blinked. Not once. In the long moments I watched him, his movements were too smooth, too fluid, as if he were gliding through water rather than walking on solid ground. His gaze locked onto mine, and a smile stretched across his face. His teeth were too white, too perfectly sharp. "First time?" he asked, his voice like honey poured over gravel. I nodded, my own voice caught in my throat, and took a seat at the bar. The polished wood felt warm beneath my hands, alive.
"What'll it be?"
"Bourbon," I managed, my throat dry. "Whatever you recommend." He reached beneath the counter and produced a decanter. I didn't recognize. The liquid inside was a deep amber, but it swirled thick as syrup. He poured it into a heavy crystal glass that seemed to devour the surrounding light. "On the house," he said, sliding it toward me. "For new friends." I stared at the drink. I could smell it from a foot away. It smelled like every secret I'd ever kept, every reason I'd ever had to drink. It smelled like absolution. It smelled like home. "Bottoms up," the bartender purred. I lifted the glass. The liquid was warm. It tasted of forgotten childhood summers and the crackle of a winter fire. It tasted of my first kiss and the sting of my last goodbye. It tasted like every opportunity I'd lost and every dream I'd never had, and beneath it all, a subtle, coppery undertone, the taste of hunger. I drained the glass in one long swallow. The bartender refilled it, without a word. "So," he leaned in, his unblinking eyes holding mine. "Tell me about yourself. What brings a man like you to the Gullet?" And I started talking. The bourbon loosened my tongue, softening the sharp edges of my life. I spoke of the case, of the 7 missing souls, of my job, of my sobriety. "Missing people," the bartender mused, polishing a glass until it gleamed. "A fascinating puzzle. Where do you suppose they go?" "I don't know," I slurred, the room starting to feel soft and welcoming. "But I'm going to find out." He let out a low chuckle. It sounded like water gurgling down a drain. "Perhaps you already have." That's when I saw them. Behind the bar, pinned to a corkboard, were dozens of black and white photographs. Patrons, all smiling, all raising a glass to the camera. And my blood ran cold. Maria Santos, David Chen, the other 5, all of them, sitting right where I was sitting, holding the same heavy glass, wearing the same blissful, vacant smile. Quite a collection. I choked out. "I like to remember my regulars," the bartender said, his smile widening. "They become family." He gestured to the wall. "Would you like to join them?" A vice of cold dread squeezed my chest. The bourbon was a fire in my belly, but ice was spreading through my veins. I tried to stand, but my legs felt like lead. "Another drink?" he asked, his voice a hypnotic whisper. I wanted to scream, no. I wanted to run, but I heard myself say, yes. He poured a 3rd glass. This one was different. The liquid was darker, almost black, and it smelled of rich earth, of fresh rain, and something else. Something that reminded me of the sterile, metallic scent of the city morgue. "Our special blend," he said, "very popular with the regulars." I drank it. I couldn't stop myself. It tasted of every nightmare I'd ever had. It tasted of failure, of despair, of the bottom of a freshly dug grave. The room began to tilt, and spin. The other customers slowly turned to look at me, their faces pale and gaunt, their eyes hollow black pits, their mouths moved in a silent, synchronized chorus.
"Welcome to the Gullet," the bartender's voice echoed in my skull, no longer coming from his lips, but from the walls themselves. "You're going to like it here."
And in that horrifying moment, I understood. The Gullet wasn't a bar. It was a stomach, and we were all being digested. I woke up in my own bed with a hangover that felt like a death sentence. My head throbbed with a pain so intense it felt structural. My mouth tasted of grave dirt and regret. I had no memory of how I'd gotten home, but I remembered everything else. The bar, the unblinking bartender, the gallery of the damned on the wall, the soul-crushing taste of that final drink. My phone was dead on the nightstand. I scrambled for the charger. No missed calls, no texts, but my banking app showed a new charge, posted at 3 a.m. from the Gullet, $89. I called the station and took a personal day. My voice, a ragged croak. I needed to understand what had happened to me, to figure out what kind of monster wore the face of a bartender. I spent the day buried in city archives, my hands shaking as I scrolled through digital records. The building on Royal Street had been erected in 1867, first a private residence, then a boarding house, then vacant for decades at a time. The current owner was a ghost corporation, Gullet Enterprises. No tax records, no business licenses, no permits. It existed only on paper. Then I found it. Newspaper archives from the 1920s. A report on a notorious speakeasy during Prohibition, operated out of that same basement. It was called the Thirsty Gullet. 7 people had vanished after visiting it. The police investigated, found nothing, and the speakeasy closed overnight in 1929. The same pattern, the same number of victims. I dug deeper, my obsession overriding the pounding in my head. The 1880s, a tavern named Gullet's Tavern. 6 people vanished without a trace. The 1850s, a gambling den called the Gullet House. 8 missing persons. Each time, the establishment would suddenly close, and the building would lie dormant for a generation. The pattern stretched back to the building's very construction. Every few decades, the entity in that basement would open for business, and in every historical account, every witness statement dismissed as drunken fantasy. The description of the proprietor was the same: a tall, pale, ageless man who never blinked.
I wasn't dealing with a serial killer. I was dealing with something that had been feeding on the lonely and the lost for over a century and a half.
And it knew I was a recovering alcoholic. It had tasted my weakness. 3 months passed. The case went cold. My captain, seeing the toll it was taking, assigned me a partner to force a fresh perspective. Detective Sarah Chen, David Chen's younger sister. She transferred to missing persons, driven by a desperate need for answers.
"I have to know what happened to my brother, Elliot," she told me on our first day, her eyes fierce with grief. "I need the truth."
The truth was a demon I was fighting every night. I dreamed of the Gullet. In my dreams, I would drink the black liquid again and again, feeling a profound peace as my identity dissolved. I'd wake with the phantom taste in my mouth, the thirst of physical ache in my throat. The thing had marked me. One rainy Thursday night, Sarah called me, her voice trembling with excitement. "I found it, Elliot." I cross-referenced offshore merchant accounts and found a shell corporation that matched the code. "There's an address. It's called the Gullet." My blood turned to ice. "Sarah, stay away from there. It's not what you think." "I'm already here," she said. "I'm going in." I need to see what they know about David. The line went dead. I raced to Royal Street, my heart hammering against my ribs. The black door was ajar, a faint, sickly yellow light spilling onto the wet pavement. I descended the stairs, the distorted jazz pulling me down like an undertow. She was there, sitting at the bar, right where I had sat, and I was there too. In a booth in the corner, a half-empty glass of amber liquid in my hand. I didn't remember arriving. I didn't remember ordering. "Elliot," Sarah said, her voice a mix of confusion and relief. "What are you doing here?" "Research," I heard myself say, my own voice sounding distant, submerged. The bartender smiled at her, that same predatory, unblinking smile. "What can I get for you, my dear?" "Information," she said firmly, "about my brother, David Chen." "I have all the information you need," he purred, already pouring the amber liquid into a glass. "But first, a drink. You look so very thirsty." He slid the glass toward her. She stared at it, and I saw the conflict in her eyes, the grief, the desperation, the raw hunger for anything that might numb the pain. "Don't?" I managed to force out, the word feeling like broken glass in my throat. "Why not?" she asked, her gaze fixed on the drink. "It smells peaceful." She lifted the glass. She drank. The change was instantaneous. The tension in her shoulders vanished. The grief in her eyes was replaced by a placid satisfaction. "More," she whispered. The bartender poured the second, darker drink. She drank that one too. Her skin grew pale. Her eyes seemed to darken, the pupils dilating until they consumed the iris. A serene, unnaturally wide smile touched her lips. "Where is my brother?" she asked, her voice calm and hollow. "He's here," the bartender said, gesturing grandly. "He's with family now. Would you like to see him?" The floor of the bar split open with a sickening, wet sound, revealing a chasm of swirling darkness. The walls of the pit were not stone, but a writhing, living tapestry of faces, hundreds of them, their eyes black, their mouths open in silent, eternal consumption. They were the regulars, and among them, I saw David Chen. He looked peaceful. He looked satisfied. He looked at his sister. "David," Sarah breathed, a tear tracing a path down her pale cheek. His lips moved, and though no sound emerged, I could read the words clearly. "Join me." Sarah turned to the bartender, her expression one of utter acceptance. "Ow." "One final drink," the thing said, its voice now a layered chorus of whispers. The last call. It poured the final, blackest liquid, a drink that absorbed the light around it, a miniature black hole in a glass. Sarah reached for it. I tried to stand, to scream, to knock it from her hand, but I was pinned to my seat, a prisoner of the bourbon and the will of the thing. She lifted the glass. She looked at me, her black eyes filled with a strange pity. "It's okay, Elliot," she said. "I understand now. This is what we've all been looking for." She drank it. Her form flickered, her face becoming a mask of pale ecstasy. She stood, walked to the edge of the pit, and stepped into the abyss without hesitation. She dissolved into the wall of faces, joining her brother in their eternal, hungry peace. The pit sealed itself. The bartender turned to me, a look of triumph on his face. He refilled my glass with the black liquid. The last call. "Your turn," it said. "You've mourned. You've struggled. It's time to rest." I looked at the glass. I looked at the spot where Sarah had vanished, and I made my choice. I didn't drink it. But this time was different. This time I was ready. In the months since my first visit, I hadn't just been haunted. I'd been working. I'd found an old, leather-bound journal in the police archives from a detective in the 1920s who had investigated the thirsty Gullet and lost his partner to it. He wrote that the creature was bound by ancient rules. It could not take what was not freely given. It was a creature of desire, and it could be poisoned by a gift it couldn't refuse. You disappoint me, the bartender hissed, its human glamour melting away to reveal the being beneath, a shifting mass of shadows, mouths, and hungry, unblinking eyes.
No more, I said, my voice clear and steady for the first time that night. I stood up, my legs finally my own.
From my jacket, I pulled a small, elegant flask. I brought you a gift. The creature paused, its myriad eyes fixing on the flask. Greed and curiosity warred with its anger. A gift. The finest I could find, I said, uncorking it. The aroma that filled the air wasn't just bourbon. It was sharper, more chemical. It was from an evidence locker, from a closed case involving a bootlegger who had accidentally created a batch of tainted whiskey. It was laced with methanol, a poison disguised as a temptation. A final offering, I said, holding it out, to join the family. I was playing its game, using its rules, offering a gift, freely given. Its hunger, its arrogance, was its undoing. A single, pale hand emerged from the shifting mass and took the flask, a worthy tribute. It tipped the flask back, and the sound of its drinking was the sound of a waterfall in a cavern. For a moment, there was silence. Then, a shudder racked its form. A sound began, not a scream, but a shriek of grinding metal and shattering glass. The illusion of the bar dissolved. The walls buckled, revealing the writhing flesh beneath. The faces in the pit cried out, not in peace, but in agony. The creature was poisoning itself from the inside out. "Did Colonel leave?" it roared, its voice tearing through the collapsing reality. "You have tasted my gift. A part of you is mine, and a part of you is now mine." I snarled back, lighting a book of matches. "And it's poison." I tossed the lit matches onto the bourbon-soaked carpet. The fire didn't just burn, it erupted. Blue and green flames raced across the floor, consuming the creature's dying body. I scrambled up the stairs, which were now just rotting wood, in a filthy basement. I burst through the door and into the clean, rainy night of the French Quarter. Behind me, the building didn't just burn. It collapsed inward, imploding into its own foundation, as if being devoured by the earth itself. When the fire department arrived, there was nothing left but a smoking hole in the ground. 6 months have passed. The official report cited the fire as an accident caused by faulty wiring in a condemned building. The missing persons case, including Sarah and David Chen, was permanently closed. The victims were presumed dead in the blaze. I quit the force. I couldn't walk those streets anymore. I couldn't pretend that the world was still the same. The creature was right about one thing. A part of me is still its. The victory wasn't clean. It left a stain. I can still taste the ghost of that bourbon. A phantom warmth in my gut. The hunger it represented didn't die in the fire. It just changed its address. Now it lives inside me. I no longer count the days of my sobriety. That was the old fight. The new fight is different. It's not about avoiding a drink. It's about living with the void the drink was meant to fill. The thing taught me a terrible lesson, that the emptiness inside us isn't a flaw to be corrected. It's a part of the human condition. You can't fill it. You can only choose what you do with it. You can let it be a space for something monstrous to grow, or you can choose to carry it as a reminder of your own strength. I'm writing this down as a warning, as a testament. The gullet is gone, but the hunger it represents is eternal. It's in the quiet desperation of a lonely heart, in the bottom of a bottle, in the silent promise that there's an easy way to make the pain stop. There isn't. There is only the choice, every single day, to keep fighting, to choose the struggle of being human over the peace of being consumed. If this story finds you in a dark place, if you feel that emptiness, if you hear that whisper promising a cure, please, I'm begging you, don't listen. Don't look for answers in a place like the Gullet. That path only leads down. Choose struggle. Choose pain. Choose life, because the alternative isn't peace. It's an eternity of being devoured, and you are worth more than that.